And wow, beautiful duplicate. Now I've got first-hand knowledge of latex painting, and you can't waste any bit of it. If you do, then you'll regret it because you get stuff like this. It looks seemingly useless, you could have stuck it onto something, but it stayed in the bowl, and it just stuck like that, and it dried, and it's just like, oh shit, what am I supposed to do now? Well, I found a use for it, because if you take it off in little strips and like this, because latex is latex, it sticks to itself automatically. You can reinforce what you're making, what you're making a mold of, because it automatically sticks. And since it's not completely dry, you can just tack it right on. I mean, it looks kind of gross now, or look kind of uneven or messy, but a few layers, a few coats, and that'll fix that. And plus, you'll get a much stronger piece. Now, I had one. The first one I made, the first one's always the best. The first one I made it's perfect. It's of course when it gets around water, it gets a little weaker, but this is a pretty sturdy build. I can make a good duplicate with this. But for this one, this is the first attempt of making a mold for this, and it didn't turn out too good because I waited too soon. I was impatient. If you're impatient, then you won't get anything done, and that's true. So this was a little too I could blow like a balloon, and I shouldn't be able to do that too easily. But yeah. So I learned from this. I learned from my mistakes. So with this one, I'm adding more layers, and I'm also reinforcing it so it keeps its shape even with pressure against it, meaning sand or whatever else. And I might just build a case around it just because. But yeah, I found these little pieces, or this was really a ball. I made it into a ball and just had it. You know, I was playing with it, throwing it around my room, just playing with it. And it's really strong. It's surprisingly sturdy. Like, oh my god. And I had this idea to fill up, because he has eye holes. This is a skull with some other stuff with holes in it. And yeah, I might be able to. Yeah, I've got one. Yeah, so this one right here, he got a little mashed up, but I mean, he still looks a little decent. You know, I'm very judgmental of my own things, but this one, it didn't turn out too bad. I got a little sand in the crevices and stuff, but yeah, it turned out all right. You know, I asked people's opinions. Cause I told them that it was warped because the bag, you know, you got to put it upside down. It was mashed. It was like that when all the stuff hardened. So when I took it off, he looked kind of deformed, but he still looks cool. I mean, it looks like a little just dopey kind of skull. And that's why you make a strong enough mold, because you know it'll hold itself a lot more, a lot easier. So these holes is what I was talking about. So his eye holes, his nose hole, this little hole right here, the tree trunk hole, under the chin, all that. That needs to get filled in to some extent. You don't want a weak part of your mold to be where the holes are, where the indentations are. So that's the perfect opportunity to take a little chunk of this, and you know, you can cut it with scissors, and you know, cut a little piece off, and or you know, roll the ball. However you can do it. You know, you can say for this, you can fill it up. And this is, of course, when you're adding the layers to this. So like that, I did that right here, and I filled up the hole. Since this is already dry and hardened, and well, not hardened, but this is already solidified and, you know, in one piece, and very resilient, it doesn't have to dry. So you can add it to your piece by piece, and it'll dry decently, like I did with the eye holes. It'll dry no problem. The paint that you have that glues it down into the mold that you're building. And as you can see right here, this saves a lot of layering, but you can't neglect all the other spots that don't have extra support. So this is just as like not a ditch effort, but this is just an attempt to keep the structure good, and because even when it says on the bottle, on the mold builder bottle, it says apply it with a fairly even coat, and try not to let it pool. Try not to let there be a lot more in this crevice than there is everywhere else on that layer, because that won't dry as much. And actually, it's weird. The layer over it, it'll form a layer over it, but the inside will still wouldn't be dry. It's frustrating when it gets like that. So, you know, best way to do it is, I'm probably dragging this on longer than it needs to be, but yeah, just fill up a crevice or two if need be, and you'll get rid of your scraps, just like that. Now you gotta build around. I wrapped it in plastic. Give me 1 second. So I wrapped it in plastic before I put the clay wall around it, so that what's this stuff called? Freeform Sculpt Epoxy. That's what I'm gonna use to make the shell for this. And I don't want it to bond to the latex somehow, because there's two compounds I have to mix together, and some chemical reaction causes it to harden, and I just don't want it to act funny with the latex. I don't know what it would do. So as a added protection, you know, I decided to do this. So it's just, it all takes patience, and it's a process, but it's all worth it. And you know, I need to learn patience anyway. So yeah, I used a sculpting tool, this right here, to help mash it down and drill holes in there. So I just carefully just mashed all around it and drilled, and yeah. Baby. But it's really all trial and error, because I could be making a terrible mistake that I don't know about. But I won't know unless I try. And this makes a lot of sense to me right now, because, you know, I feel like I've covered all bases that I need to cover in making this, and that's something I need to learn. Wax paper probably could fix this problem, but don't put your epoxy mix on wood, because it will stick and it will stay. So it's all just homemade, you know, workings, and, you know, making stuff, figuring out how things work. So if I screw up, hey, I learned. Since this is epoxy, since it's freeform sculpting epoxy dough, part A and part B, you can use, all you need is like a little puddle of water and the sculpting tool, and it doesn't stick to the tool, and you can stroke it and shape it however you need. This stuff is very useful. Alright, so it came out great. It's really light. It's I got my notches in pretty well, and it pops right off. Very, very nice. I'm not really worried about making a complete shell. It's just doing what I needed to do. Snaps right in place like a plastic glove. So got that, and I wanted to add a little bit of plastic just so it wouldn't, to ensure that it wouldn't bond to this, but I coated it with wax and the clay that was left over from it taking shape, so that should keep it from bonding with the other side of this epoxy. But we'll find out if it was just that one big hard shell. It should be, because I had it on this wax paper and it didn't stick. Hey, so we're back, and I'm super excited because it looks like it turned out perfect, exactly how I wanted it to. And you know, all this is just an outer casing so that, you know, my piece doesn't warp like it did. I did some serious distortion the first time I did it. You know, his face was all modified, or his face was really jacked up, I'll say that, compared to the original. But now it should be fine, because check it out. Pops apart like plastic. I took the plastic off earlier. But the next thing I'm gonna do is wrap this up. Or not wrap it up, but I'm gonna put some baby powder on it just to keep it from being so sticky. Okay, so just whatever. I went to Walgreens and bought this stuff, or Dollar General or whatever. So I just put a little bit on there. Baby.
Ain't you had enough punishment for What the hell is that supposed to be?
And poof.